Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar sponsored by the Office of Online Learning and the Teaching and Learning Center. We are thrilled to welcome Joanna Ross-Hersey to our stage today. She'll be presenting on some very innovative and creative work that she's doing in her classes. She's a native Vermonter, a tuba and euphonium soloist who has produced 2 solo albums, Aquam Mirabilis and Zigzags, 2010 and 2015. Featuring music by composers including Hildegard von Bingen and Libby Larsen in combination with her own works. Dr. Hersey is president of the International Women's Brass Conference, professor of tuba and euphonium at the UNCP, and a Yamaha and Parker mouthpiece performing artist. As a composer, her new Fresh Faces series highlights diverse music for solo and chamber brass, available from her website, and her newest solo composition, 1112, for solo tuba and electronics, takes soloists and audience alike on a tour of Hildegard von Bingen's convent through a map presented as a graphic score. We're thrilled, too, to have her here today as the speaker at UNCP's Fall 2020 Convocation, one of the first times that we sort of had to have a large gathering in a very virtual space. And as she and I were chatting before this meeting, it's been wonderful to see the many innovations that can take place even in very challenging circumstances. So we are thrilled to have her here to share with us the incredible work that she's doing in her classroom. And I'm going to go ahead and turn over the presentation to her. This meeting will be recorded so that it can be shared online on our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or comments throughout, please enter them in the chat, and I'll be happy to moderate some conversation at the end. So Joanna, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to share with you some of what's going on not only just in the music building, but within the brass within the music building. So part of my identity as a performer involves composing pieces to perform. And then as we teach the students in the music department, it's a natural extension of that to want to compose and control some of the work that the students get to experience and perform through that creativity, that extension of my performance is creating music for them and then their performances. So I very much feel like I'm channeling that energy through them from my performance. And now we can't do any of that in this current climate with COVID. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my presentation. All right, so what we're talking about is, it's big in that it's how do we react in our classes as educators and then ourselves as artists and performers. How do we react to this current climate of really being asked to do more regarding representation and destroying what is the current canon in that case, which would be that you would take brass in a chamber setting and you would play Vivaldi and Bach and Beethoven, and then maybe Aaron Copland would be about as modern as you got in the turn of the 20th century, and you would consider that a job well done. But now what we're talking about is going a little further. And so I am going to show you a project that has to do with stickers and my chamber music for this semester, this COVID semester, my chamber music trio, 3 students at UNCP who have been putting this into practice. So we are Hildegard's on Twitter, and she is Coaching Inclusion and Inspiration. I worked on this sticker project with a graphic designer, Judy, and she is in Raleigh. She was hoping, we invited her to be here with us today to help me present, and she has a new baby at home. So she decided that she would send me comments, which I've incorporated into the presentation, and then we would have her with us that way. So I'm grateful to her. So my scholarship activity as a tuba soloist and a recording artist has also included arranging and composing so that I can get out from under that European white male canon. And so my first solo album, as Scott mentioned, is all music for tuba by women composers and composers of color, because my thought was that I wanted to share, if I can do this as a tuba soloist, which is sort of the worst of the worst regarding repertoire, and that people still are shocked that there are even tuba solos sometimes, that if I could do that with tuba, then anyone can do that with any instrument. So this is something that many people already know about me, and as to how that I would bring that forward in the classroom would be a little bit what we're talking about today. One of my friends recently said this quote, "I thought if any pieces by women were good, I would know about them." And this is a woman who has a master's degree in performance, and that just, she wasn't playing anything because she just thought it would come to her. And we know, regardless of our discipline, that of course we have to go out and get it and bring it back. So that's what we're doing. And another problem we experience in the programming aspect, why wouldn't a place like UNCP be incorporating more music by BIPOC composers and female composers and world composers? Part of the answer to that is it's too hard. Some of it is more modern. It's commissioned by people who are upper level. And so one of the problems is we don't have music at the level of the students that very well represent. So that's another challenge that keeps people from success. So as Scott mentioned, I started doing music publishing from my own website, and I'm creating and sharing music that represents these categories, that is at all levels. So really from advanced to middle school through high school and advanced high school and beyond, so that regardless of the level that some student might come to us at UNCP, there should be music of all that's available, which is what we're doing. So some of our goals for the chamber music class, I think a lot of us were mystified. If we're going to need to take chamber music or concert band or marching band into an online setting, how would we do that? And there would have been a lot of talk in the music community about, well, what we need to do is we need to look at why we teach chamber music. And so I sat down and I made the students an instructional video. We're going to just hope they all watched it diligently in the beginning. What does it mean to take chamber music, and what do you come out of it with, and what are the goals of that class? Only one of the goals is that you play a concert. More of the goals involve learning about yourself and others and working in a team. And I can do that through Webex. So a lot of the ideas of what we're doing could stay. So these were some of the goals regarding the idea of showcasing the composers. So the music that we're playing, whose music are we playing? Whose music am I showing them is valuable by putting it in their folder, by creating a recording, for the concert. So we want to show a more diverse group of composers, of course, and role models who look like all the students. This is key. And then also, these sometimes can be old pieces. I'd like them to feel a little more real and relevant to the students, and that's why the stickers came about. These are stickers of the composers that the students are playing in their ensemble. And so the motivational quotes idea came from that. There's a little bit of a tradition, especially in band, that you would have a sticker on your instrument case or on your locker, maybe on your music folder. And so this sticker idea that a music store might give you stickers, that's something that already exists and that band kids are often familiar with. And so envisioning something that I could put on my tuba case that would be a motivational quote. And then we want our students to be so comfortable and so familiar with this approach that then they feel it lack. They feel the lack. When they go somewhere else and they're leaders in their communities, most of the students in our group that we're going to look at today are music education majors. They're going to go out into the schools, and I need them to feel uncomfortable when they're in that setting that is not inclusive because they're so used to it from us. That's what we want. So here they are. Aren't they fabulous? We ended up early on in the semester switching to meeting a lot through Webex because we had some issues with health early on. So we are having rehearsal over Webex, which is challenging. Occasionally, I will go in a larger room with one of the students, and then some of the other ones will meet us via Webex, and that varies a little bit. So sometimes what we're doing is there's a time lag. You can't all play together, but Morgan there, she will play and the others will mute, and she will lead them in a round of the music, and then she'll mute, and then one of the others will take charge, and he will count us off, and he will play, and you'll hear his sound where you're playing along while you're muted. So it's a little bit more challenging, but they are still having rehearsal every Tuesday and Thursday with me for this music. And so I ordered these stickers, and I said to the designer, Judy, I said, I have a new project. She and I have worked together several times. Let's make some stickers that have motivational quotes. And I was just picturing the picture of the composer. And then I spent some time finding a motivational thing they said. Like Nadia Bolinger said, without discipline, there can be no freedom. So that's perfect. True and perfect. So something like that. I was envisioning something very simple and straightforward. And then she came back with more, which is exactly what you want. You want people like that on your team. So she said this. She said that she too had originally thought, that could just be an afternoon project for her to throw a circle design with a picture and a quote at me and then order them that night. And it would be, as she says here, totally an easy way out. But she, being a clarinetist, she is a graphic designer by trade, but she has a master's degree in clarinet performance. And so she also knows me well. She knows that it would be something more could be even better. So that's how they got so good. And I think also it's important to stop and think that she was comfortable changing, because she emailed me back and she said, I have a different idea. What if we did this instead? So this is all on her because she did these brilliant, amazing things. And I just said, oh yeah, that's better. Your idea is better. So this sense of her feeling trust in me, that she could criticize me a little bit and say, you know, this is the most boring thing you've ever come up with, but maybe we could do A, B, and C. And that working relationship is really rare. And I'm very grateful to her because now we have something amazing. And she took me beyond where I was thinking, which is how our team should work. So let's look at them. So this is the first. We're going to go through the 6 stickers, and then I'm going to show you the students, and we're going to listen a little bit to some of this music. So the first composer sticker is Twitter, and this is Beatrice de Dieu, who was a French singer-songwriter in the Middle Ages, and she has a song. You can see the quote there, I must sing of what I'd rather not. I am so angry with the one I love because I am deceived and betrayed. She's special to us for many reasons, but one of which is that she has one of our only songs from this medieval singer-songwriter zone that is from the woman's perspective. So this is her as a woman. Her song lyrics are the women's side of the romance. And this did not go well. He is going to be sorry. So for example, this semester, one of my freshmen on euphonium is playing this piece that this text is from on her instrumental jury as an unaccompanied euphonium solo that I arranged it for her. And so it's neat that she'll be able to have a sticker from one of her jury pieces. And you can see that because she was alive at the same time as our second sticker, Hildegard von Bingen. Judy had the idea to put Hildegard von Bingen replying to the tweet, you know, what did he do this time with the emoji? And so for Judy, it was really fun to be somewhat comic. So as you can see, these are Judy's comments. You know, she says, it's hilarious to pair the eye-rolling emoji with an 11th century nun. These social media, she had this idea that it would be, as you can see, a great way to get a lot of information in, the location, the year, so we can see 1175, and this is helping the students make them feel more real, obviously. And I love this. Hildegard could have some sass. So this woman is not a famous composer. I think the music faculty would all know who she was, but not the general public at all, and certainly not the students. Then we follow Beatrice, this is in chronological order, to Hildegard and her beautiful Twitter account. And this, I love this too, even in a world that's being shipwrecked, remain brave and strong. I just read a great biography on Hildegard, and so I was able to get some nice quotes from her letters. Hildegard's music is all across my albums and my output, and so we're seeing a lot of nice appreciation for her as a leader. And as Trudy said, that she was able to include a lot of different information in these, as well as what she was calling Easter eggs. So sometimes like the amount of likes will be the person's birth year. So we have those later on. So that's Hildegard. And then we have Joseph Balon, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, who is a composer of African descent born in the Caribbean to a plantation owner father and a slave mother. And he was raised in Paris and educated in all of the ways of a gentleman, including fencing, which you can see in the cover photo from this Facebook profile. He was also in the same social zone, being a director of a top orchestra in Paris as Marie Antoinette. And we know that Marie Antoinette may have attended some of the concerts. So it's fun for Judy and I to imagine that she would have commented on his Facebook. And so the idea would be that these stickers, I paid for them myself. This wasn't something that I got a grant to do. It was a bit of an investment, but I'm hoping that the stickers can direct back and I can sell a piece of sheet music or two, and that would cover the cost of them eventually. And that way I can give them away. I ordered 500 of each composer, so I can give them away when we have concerts and when we're doing that again in the future. So as Trudy said, she wanted to give us something more than just a simple sticker. So he's got 1745 likes on this Facebook post, which is a quote from him. I had trouble finding quotes from him. He's not as well researched yet, as there's less we know, but he was born in 1745. So a way for the students to remember he's a contemporary of Mozart. Then we have Fannie Mendelson. I love Fannie Mendelson. Is, of course, these next two ladies are Clara Schumann and Fannie Mendelson Hensel. They're the 19th century contributions here, and they're both well known because of their connection to the men in their life. And so we'd like to bring them out from under that. In this case, Fannie Mendelson is, of course, Felix Mendelssohn's sister. She went on and married an artist, Hensel. So Fanny lived her life in Germany, and this is a quote from her. We have lots of letters. She was a letter writer, and we're always grateful to those as historians. So she's got a wonderful quote about living a long life. And then Judy decided that Felix should be commenting on the Facebook post. And so she did the same with the likes. That she was born in 1805. She lived not very long, a very short life, as did Felix. And so Felix Mendelssohn needs to just go practice. We have a little bit of an inside joke in the music department that when students are sitting around, we tend to walk by and we say, go practice. So this is a little bit of an inside joke. So Judy had fun imagining that Fanny and Felix would share some banter, which they did. They were a close family. So again, Felix and Fanny Mendelson. Felix Mendelssohn is played all the time. Fanny has a real presence in the keyboard world, but not in the brass world. So I have arranged one of her pieces for brass that's on deck for these chamber ensembles now. Then we get to Clara Schumann. She's on Instagram. I'm really proud of Clara because she has 530,000 likes on this Facebook post, the Instagram post. Also, what was fun for us is that when she and I started designing these, we went so the place, Clara Schumann was a professor of music, and as well as being married to Robert Schumann, was an amazing performer and educator in her own right. And she taught this place, the Dr. Hawkes Conservatorium. That's actually the school she taught's actual Instagram handle. So it's still in place today. And I went on Instagram and made sure that I could find. So it's neat that there's actually, the school is still there. And the same with Nadia Bolinger. So she has 1819 for her number of posts. And that is her birth year. So that's neat. So a quote about the joy of composing from a historical female role model. Very important. And we can see that Robert Schumann has liked this post. I thought about adding Brahms to that mix and getting a little bit more into that mix. So we like this sense of it being a little bit funny, sort of like inside jokes that you would know. And Clara Schumann, I loved this profile picture because she looks just a little bit cranky. And she had a lot to be cranky about. She had she was a very strong leader, and she had to do a lot in her day. So she can look a little cranky on her Instagram, and don't we all, maybe? Then we come to the 20th century with Nadia Bolinger, and Judy decided that she was going to be the one who loved emojis. And I love that she has 45,000 followers because she was the bomb. She was born in 1887, as you can see there. And her, without discipline, there can be no freedom, quote. Nadia Bolinger is one that I want to make sure the students know. She's mentioned all the time as an educator. She's paired with the men around her at the time as she taught so-and-so, she taught so-and-so, as like sort of a secondary that she, as an educator. But she was also a conductor and a performer, a composer, of course. And so I have music for Nadia that's arranged for two brass duo, so a brass duo that would be at the level the students could play. And so that they see her as a creator, and that as an educator, she was so successful because she was a creator. And instead of making her secondary to somebody that they will have heard of. So Nadia as well has that, this sense of it being a little funny that Nadia, she's a very serious figure in history, but that she would be funny like that, I think is neat. And, sometimes these social media things move so fast, it's always a moving target with the students, but at least that they can see and get a sense. So this is what they look like all together. They're very bright and colorful, and she did an absolutely gorgeous job on them. And so what happened was when we were doing the music, I met us so that they could, so the chamber ensemble this semester rehearsed and learned a Clara Schumann piece, a beautiful lieder. I know we have vocals here. It's the Liebste Schönheit, which I arranged for 4 brass instruments. And this is trumpet and horn, and then I had to rearrange it because we were supposed to be a quartet, and then a student didn't return, so I rearranged it for trio. So trumpet, horn, and euphonium played Clara Schumann, and after they learned that one, we worked on the Joseph Balon piece, the Andante, which I'm actually going to play you a little clip of. So this is them. We met and we distanced, and they got their stickers, so they're holding the stickers for the 2 pieces that we played so far. And then I wanted to talk to you just a little bit before I play at the end here of what I'm doing next with this project. So there's 6 stickers now, and the students are going to be able to, they earn all 6 by playing them. And we talk about them in the rehearsal and like how that would be different. And these are the next ones that I'm making. Charles Albert Tindley and Florence Price are two 20th century composers who have contributed a great deal, but are not huge household names, especially outside of music. So I wanted to take a side trip to what I'm programming for spring because I just finished. It was a 40-page PDF, you all. So an arrangement of 4 hymns for brass, which is going to be what they play in spring. And by the time it all got done, it was a 40-page PDF, and it was just a major achievement. So 2 of the hymns that they're going to be playing in spring are by this man, Charles Albert Tindley. So now we're thinking of having a sticker for Charles Albert Tindley, and I'm also going to have the students design their own. That was another part of this project, was the sense that the students, after playing the music, could design their, like, a different social, like if we had Instagram, we'd have them design Twitter, or how would they vary what would their Facebook look like if this was their Instagram? So the students would get in on the design process too. So I wanted to tell you about Charles Tindley because it's a fun little project to think about what would his sticker be. So he was in Philadelphia. He was so successful with his congregation as a minister that he had this church, the place was able to build this church because he had almost 10,000 in his congregation. They had to have 3 seatings. The church holds about 3,000 and they had to have 3 seatings. He composed the hymns as well as the sermons, which I think is so neat. And he composed the piece that they're going to play in spring, which is one of the roots, the sources for the civil rights hymn, We Shall Overcome. This is the church today. As you can see, it's very much the same. It's alive and well today. And they have a beautiful organ. So the pieces that the students are going to learn in spring come from this setting, and Charles Albert Tindley composed the sermons and the hymns. I wanted to show this picture because there's a story on the website. We want this to be storytelling, right? I think if the students can hear the stories, they'll remember it. These chairs were purchased, the entire congregation in the 1920s was asked to each purchase a chair for $1. In the church history section of their website, it says that the families today remember their grandparents saying how they had to scrimp and save to get that dollar to buy. Each family donated a chair. And here they are still looking so beautiful with the wooden rafters. I mean, that's so lovely. So Judy says, all right, we're making a sticker for Tindley now. Who would have been commenting on his Instagram post? Because we want to connect the students with the other artists at the time. Like, we want the students to know that the Chevalier de Saint George, one of our early role models of color in the classical composition, was of the level in Parisian society that he was likely corresponding and chatting to Marie Antoinette. We want people to know that this isn't some side thing. He's the center of Parisian society at that time. They have all heard of Mozart, but they have not heard of the Chevalier. And so we want to connect the students to that society that they've already learned about. So Judy says, Joanna, who's going to like his Instagram posts? Who should we put in there? And I have no idea. Philadelphia Society in the 1930s. Who are our composers? Who are our musicians? Well, we know we have Louis Armstrong. We know we have Duke Ellington. Where are my women? So I did some research and I found the coolest thing. So here's Tindley there in the one part of the screen. And these 2 ladies are who are going to like his Instagram posts. And I would share this with the students that in Philadelphia at this time, who are the people that would have been in his social circle likely? So the top one is Ethel Waters, a very well-known blues singer and songwriter also. And she grew up and lived and worked in Philadelphia and was waiting tables at around the same time he was a minister at that church. So in real life, they actually might have known each other. And then down below is, of course, Marian Anderson. I want to just make sure I have my notes here. That's the famous March on Washington Marian Anderson, when she was singing in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And she is, of course, a huge role model for women of color, trying to break that color barrier in classical singing. And so she is also active in the same area at the same time, and likely would have known and perhaps been aware of Tindley working. So I think it's neat that they would maybe also have Instagram profiles. The students could create these, and that we could maybe listen to that music in the chamber setting. So back to our Chevalier de Saint George, and the piece that I arranged for the students, just to finish up, and then we can talk a little bit if you want, this sense of we have to perform the music, we have to make it alive. We have to counter this stereotype that if it was good, I would have heard of it, right? This sense that often, and I know it doesn't matter what your field is, I'm a musician, but whatever your field is, we hear it the same. Well, we don't want to program something just because it's a BIPOC composer or just because it's a woman. I only want to program music that's good and valuable. Well, right? We would all say, how do you know if it's good or valuable if you're not even looking at it or listening to it? You need to bring it into your circle. There's some music that's awful. We throw that away or we teach why it doesn't work. And there's some music that we're going to keep forever. This Andante that I'm about to play for you is the most adorable thing ever. And I am so proud of the students for playing it. It's a violin solo with small orchestra. It's in the key of D minor. So as an educator, it gets the students to work in a bad key. Now, D minor is not the worst of all keys, but the minor is hard for students because especially here in the South, if you've grown up in the marching band tradition, which my students have, they're not as familiar with minor keys as trumpet players because they tend to be in that major band setting. You might explore a minor key briefly in a march or something, but you're probably not going to have as much experience with the tunings of minor. Remember, is when you're lowering some notes, and there's a little more of a sad feeling sometimes to minor or serious nature. And sometimes the students, if they're from a marching background, they're not as familiar with that, or things that are more lyrical are hard because you've been taught a lot of this strong, proud playing for the marching band style. It's wonderful, but I liked this particular one because an andante means a slower, more medium tempo, a walking speed, a medium, easy tempo, not a fast, spirited thing. So to teach the students to work in this is a little bit of a challenge. So it was originally for violin. We're hearing it now. I'm going to play a little of it for you. It's going to be trumpet and horn and euphonium. The euphonium is also sometimes called a baritone horn, and it looks like a little mini tuba. It's an instrument of its own right in the same register as the trombone. And these are students, they're all undergraduate, 2 juniors, and then the young lady is an incoming freshman. So for her, this is what her norm has been so far as a collegiate. So the idea with how do I prepare this music when they're rehearsing online? So what we did was what you might be familiar with, seeing your friends and neighbors sharing on social media, this idea of a multi-track recording where each student rehearses together with us to get the style, how we're going to do it, what tempo, and then they make a recording of them playing their own part by themselves. So you'll see they're not masked or using bell covers in the recording, and that's because they were alone in a room. We weren't there with them. They each recorded on their own and sent it to me, and I made them a track that they could listen to in their earbuds that had a click where like how fast we're going to go, and it had the music in there and that they could rehearse with it so that they could keep up. I will tell you, the first time we did this piece is about 2 minutes. They were together for 4 seconds, and then the entire rest of it was a disaster. It was somewhat comical. So they played bom, beam, bom, and then the rest of it was toast. They all went different directions. It was a complete mess, and it was funny. So we played it in rehearsal, and we did some comment and pros and cons. And they were like, well, we played to the end. I'm like, yeah. And it was funny because like one kid was still playing 10, 15 seconds after the other 2 had stopped. And it was because they just hadn't really quite been able to listen and play at the same time. New skill. We don't have to do that. There's no conductor. So it was really quite a miracle. And so what I'm going to play you is the second version. This is from about week 4. So I was saying in the beginning that I was a little shy of whether I wanted to play the music for you because I felt like this is only week 4. It's really of a sound test and a rehearsal for them to get used to this. After this, though, we moved on to the holiday music, and we're recording holiday music right now so that we can present to you our music department holiday extravaganza. So our trio, my brass trio, will be presenting beautiful holiday tunes on the holiday extravaganza. So I've been working with them on the holiday tunes now, which I didn't want to play today because we're not ready yet. So you will hear this brass trio again. If you're following our UNCP, we have a Department of Music Facebook page, and those of us on the faculty, many of us have social media pages, will be sharing. So you'll get to hear my brass trio in all their glory with their beautiful Silent Night. That'll be coming. This was the early part of the semester when we were learning this technology. And so even though it's a little rough around the edges, I'm so proud of them. And you'll see what I mean. They're bringing this music to life. So I worked with them on how not to sound like you're just listening to a click and to try to make music anyway. That was one of the biggest challenges for them, was they're alone. And it's not chamber music if you're alone, is it? So how do we bridge that gap? So really very interesting. So again, we're going to hear a little of the Andante from the Violin Concerto from 1794, written in Paris by the Chevalier de Saint George, who is a role model for composers of African descent. He is not the only one from this time frame. There are actually more. In fact, if you can see this sticker, this was one of the things that Judy and I discussed as part of the creative process. She had it say the first composer of African ancestry. And I knew that there were others at the same time. And she and I went back and forth and said, I don't think we should say the first because we don't want to diss the other ones that may have been also in that time frame. Maybe we should just say one of, or we came up on the wording leading classical composer. It was certainly the most well-known in Europe at that time. But being careful not to step on the toes and to be inclusive of all and not just simply pick, we don't want to token it and just pick the one and be finished. We want to acknowledge it's a part of a whole group of people working. So, oh my goodness. Okay. I'm going to turn up my sound a little bit. And again, I'm going to play this online for you. It's not an ideal way to share music, but I think it's important that you see it, warts and all, and wonky internet and all. So here we go with our performance of the Andante by the Chevalier de Saint George. And you can hear that minor key in there. That's hard for them to hear. Thank you. I know. Oh, you guys. Okay. So the idea would be that we're all still learning, right? We're all trying to figure this out. It's such a nerve-wracking time. You want them to get as much out of it. You want to pull as much out of them. They're pulling it out of us as educators, right? So I know there must be questions and maybe things I said that didn't make any sense. So I'd love to have a conversation about some things that you all might suggest and think about for our endeavor.
Again, feel free to just unmute and ask questions, or if you want to put something in the chat, I'm happy to take it.
Well, I was just wondering if you've tried using USB mics since week 4 and whether that improves the coordination.
Yes, I haven't yet, and now it's this week that we're recording the holiday music. So the holiday extravaganza is, of course, a bit away, but we need time. So I have an 11/1 deadline to record and submit. So they rehearse today at 3:30. So we're going to, I'm going to make sure that they do the best that they can for that, because you're right, we're hearing the individual sound on their phones, right? Not designed for this at all. So something that we could improve on is also they don't balance themselves. So there's lots of things that they could get out of the way more and then come back up, which they would do automatically if they were live. So yes, with the music department, and props to them, the music department purchased, Dr. Vandermeer purchased USB mics enough for the entire school to use should they need to record this way. So that's a wonderful thing. We're really grateful for. That would fix a lot of what we're hearing for tone. Absolutely.
I'm also just curious about during Zoom also, or Webex, for the actual rehearsal time.
It's
where the
hard. It
USB
depends
mics
on where the students are. Like sometimes if they're in their apartments, then the web goes in and out and it's
are. Right.
really wonky. So like Zaire would be leading along and we'd be all playing along, but then he'd disappear. So, and then he'd come back and he'd be in a total different spot than you were. So what we've found works well is to do smaller chunks. Like we're gonna do this 8 bars and we're gonna do it 3 times in a row. And then we're gonna do that 8 bars. We don't really try to run. And that, as you noticed, was a real short clip. That's actually just the introduction to the Andante, which goes on way longer, but I finagled it because I'm the arranger. So I made it have an ending that went more like a real. So shorter also helped, I think, too, just to get, and we talked a lot about things that we would try to in real life, even though you can't, like where we're going to breathe together, and you can't see that as much when we're on Webex. So sometimes, and as we said at the beginning, it was, we had some health concerns within the group early on that made me feel like we needed to meet online. And so it wouldn't be the ideal scenario. The music department had a summer task force, which I was part of, and Mark was also, that we went ahead and we tried to make our best case scenarios. And for the smaller ensembles, we know that if we distance like 10 feet and we're using masks and bell covers, that we do feel safe with that. And so the original plan for chamber music was that we would do that distancing in our large halls, and that these masks and bell covers are pretty effective when they're used properly, and you can still sound good with them. This group, though, I just felt that it, for what was happening, maybe wasn't ideal for right then. But in our future selves, as more careful, our guardians of our spaces, we do really have a lot of ensembles that are able to meet outside, and that's happening now. And so it's not that all the ensembles at UNCP are not meeting this way, but it is a good option as a worst case scenario.
I was going to say Zoom before Mark mentioned that. But if you're doing it in the hallway or in smaller spaces, do you feel much feedback? Because that was one of the things I wanted to ask about, if there's a feedback or echo kind of thing. And the other was, there is a time lapse about in the video syncing. So I was curious about how you would take care of that.
Yes, you're exactly right. So the key thing is that everyone has to mute but one person, and that way the time lapse isn't noticed. So it's actually kind of fun. So I've been doing it too, because now we're on Christmas music, and who doesn't want to play Christmas music? So if we're doing Deck the Halls with Christmas hats, you guys, it's going to be amazing. So we're trying to rehearse the Deck the Halls, and I'm keeping them online because we do have an uptick in some nerves regarding the virus with the music department right now. And we're trying to be especially vigilant. And so what we do is we have everybody mute but one person, and sometimes it's just me and I will lead them. And I have pretty good internet when I'm home. If I'm in my office, it works fine. And so if everybody mutes but one, and then that person leads us through, and then everybody else can feel not shy, because if you're muted and you're playing and then they can't hear you, kind of nice. You just feel it. So we've been having fun with Deck the Halls and Silent Night and doing that. Right. It does have a delay. So what you saw there was I took each individual video into the Final Cut software. I learned how to use Final Cut this semester. I'm still, that I think was my very first Final Cut project ever. And I can set it up so that they all start at the same time and run. But then it's up to what they did. Like there was some examples in there where the horn player got 2 beats off, and he was off, and then he landed back on, so it was like a win. So, but you can't help what they do afterwards, and then the end's often not together. So this listening to the click, they're right. Like if we were doing it, we'd be fine, but they're not experts at that yet. So they don't always stick to it. So yeah, there is echo and feedback if you're all trying to unmute. And so I run class with them all muted, and I just change who leads. And sometimes I'll have them sing. I'll say, sing us through this, and then stay close to your mic. Because we can't hear.
Could there be like a visual oscilloscope kind of thing? I don't know, to start.
Yeah, like the sound.
I'm sorry, I'm asking all these questions.
No, I like it. Yeah.
I love your department so much, and all the students who do so wonderful things outside of my class. I love it. So
Yes, it's fun, isn't it? And so like one of the things I did with them, like you say about I showed them the movie software. So in the Final Cut, you can see the sound waves and you can see like the note goes along and it should be a rectangle. If you go, bah, like beautiful. Now, sometimes it goes, bah. So you're supposed to see the ba, ba, ba. And then you could tell when someone's note was supposed to go and the other person's is later behind. And I showed them that so we could see, okay, do you see how you breathed and then it made you late? And then I could show them the sound wave images. And then when they're doing their own recording and they, like, even if you're using like voice memo on your iPhone, even or GarageBand, whatever it is you're using, you can see your visuals of your sound waves too. And that, I think you're right. What can we get to have them see that their time? So mapping it. Yeah, it's wonderful. And it is a plus, like for them to have to think about it that way. Because somebody like me, I've made CDs before, so I know this, but they don't. That's not something they've ever had explained to them.
Well, you're much better faculty than I am because I'm learning as I'm teaching my students.
Oh my gosh, I stayed up late. So last night I was working on Silent Night and I tell you what, I had to Google every 3 seconds. How do you do this in Final Cut Pro? How do you do this in Final Cut Pro? And it is a challenge we're all facing, but I felt like I see a lot of my colleagues. I think many of us might be similar. You're following some of your other colleagues at other universities and I feel some people giving up. I feel them saying, oh, well, I don't know what to do. So whatever, we'll just have them listen to recordings and write an essay. Well, okay, but maybe we could still have a concert and I don't mind telling you that Andante is a high school level arrangement. That's okay with me. Right. My students can play better, levels of difficulty, but now's not the time.
Yeah.
Right? This is getting them to explore, and they could see how uncomfortable it was, and they could see all the problems. We did a session where when they were with the stickers, that picture from Moorhall Auditorium, I played them the video. And it was like we had a little party. We had the stickers and we listened to the video. They both, the two that were there, they both said, wow, it sounds better than I thought.
Right.
And it does, because they have the sense of this is all so awful. But really, it's darling. Yeah, it's wonderful.
By sharing this, it's not help. Many faculty are struggling. I don't think they're giving up as much as they need to see that I don't like this phrase, we are all in it together, but it is like if you share and you see each other's struggles, you could be enlightened and then a little bit warm and say, okay, I'm not alone in this. And
it'd be forgiving.
I thought science was hard, but no, I can tell by what now
science is hard.
Yours is, this is amazing. Thank you. I just wanted to see what you're doing. I'll join you, but I have to go to work.
I'm glad to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I saw even your piece when you did the beginning of the semester on stage in GPAC all by yourself.
Yes.
And I got a chance to tell you it was awesome.
Oh, thank you. And that's that lady from the sticker. So yeah, we got her some publicity. So good for that. Thank you. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jerry.
Bye.
Bye.
A lot of us are tired these days. I was going to say, I love the humor that you built in throughout the semester, the inside jokes that built community. And it does seem to help, I think. One way to deal with the pandemic is to find something that we can laugh at and to have those inside jokes that bind us together. So I appreciated that humor.
Thank you.
I mean, the whole idea of the stickers, like that's just so ingenious. And I just think that's great. And I also think it's great that you're programming these, composers that don't get as much exposure. And I love that it's like, oh, it must not be good if I don't know about it. And it's like, no, there's so much. So I guess my question is, I want to do more of composers that are lesser known, BIPOC and female. Like, do you have resources that you dig in, where you find some of these little known pieces? I find some here and there, some publishing companies, but I'm just wondering what
there's all kinds of great. There's one favorite one that I have is called the Composer Diversity Database, which is they have, it's a searchable database. So you can search like oboe by a composer who's living and Hispanic, or I can search tuba by, anybody from the 17th century or whatever. And so the composer diversity database, and that has all constant, like you can add your own works to it. So that's a good one if you just want to throw in, small voice choir or voice and piano or unaccompanied, whatever. That's a good one. There's also the Hildegard Publishing Company. Somebody has a, and they just published a collection of art song by women composers.
I bought it.
Yes, right. So that's, and then there's some similar ones. There's a duo called Black Violin, which is really wonderful. And they have there's also a CD I have of all violin music by composers of color. And that was also a nice jumping off point because I can steal all of that for brass. You don't have to reinvent the wheel necessarily. And one of the things I did with the hymns was I sat down and I thought, you know what, we can't just keep playing jingle bells. We need to have holiday music that is more representative. And so I just started Googling who are our hymn composers of color, and there's a good amount, not that many women of color as much. And I found two women who were 19th, early 20th century hymn writers, one of whom was blind, which I thought was neat because she continued to compose after being blind. So that's a fun way to bring in a story to the students about overcoming that challenge. And then Charles Tindley was the other. And of course, I hadn't heard of him. And then I felt terrible, like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard of this man. But we don't want to feel bad. We just want to include. So once I started researching hymns, I thought, gosh, you could do a whole volume of hymns. And when they're instrumental, and this would be different for you, Katie, but when I'm instrumental and I'm presenting a brass trio playing the music of the hymn, it takes away some of that religious element because there isn't the text. So I feel like I can present that music in a university setting where it may not be appropriate to have all Christian, for example, but it becomes just a song if you don't include the text. And that's a nice way to, so for music in church or for this music to celebrate the sense that we could have a wider. So I do like there's something called the International Alliance for Women in Music, which has conferences and has a searchable database on their website too. And once you start following and listening, it's Rob Deemer, Deemer, Rob Deemer. He teaches at Fredonia, and he's the one that's leading the composer diversity database. And he does a lot of work and publishing in this regard. He's a composer himself. And so once you start following and listening, then you really start, they actually, like my quote at the beginning when my friend said, I thought that I would just know about them. They actually do start coming to you. And when I'm on Twitter, I see all kinds of examples that I need to get that piece or I need to, so it does kind of flow in a neat way. I just ordered a book there's a British Nate Holder, and he wrote a book that's called Where Are All the Black Women Composers? It's I think it's designed to be a young adult book, and I just ordered it and it's on its way. So that's one that I'll share on my social media, and that's how I found out about it, was because he tweeted about it. And so I think it's a wonderful culture that we're creating of trying to work on this together.
Well, as you sort of put the composers in context and in sort of networks, you're building not only the networks that students can see historically, but the networks that they now can build together. And I liked where you started. Yes. You said you want them to feel, I think it was something, you want them to feel uncomfortable when they're in a non-inclusive setting.
Yes.
So now they have the networks.
The gatekeepers are gone. The hierarchy is still in place, but it used to be that you couldn't make a CD or publish music unless you met all those ticks in the box, like you used to have to, get accepted first and all of that. And now I can just publish something on my website, and it's available in a new way. Those gatekeepers are gone for our students. And if one of those students that you watched on that video, if they want to start recording or composing or take their band in a direction where they're going to do this, they can do it. They don't need to apply. They can find funding, they can network. And it's not like it was before when most people sat around and a few people did all of the producing. And it's changed now.
It's beautiful.
It's good. It's scary because
Yes.
Then everything's out there in a big mix, but it's really inspiring to think that our students won't have that sense of watching like we might have had when we were coming up. Yeah,
Well,
we
it's
saw
true
like on the outside. Yeah.
The technology, as you noted, they've noticed things that they do automatically in person that they then have to think about maybe technologically. But I think you're also showing them that you're showing them the skills or the techniques that they need to do to produce the kind of material that you're talking about now that they can produce. Well, I think it's been interesting to see that shift as you talked about it.
And they're seeing skills that isn't necessary. These skills aren't necessarily part of what used to be the sort of classic music major. Like we were supposed to be a quartet. I had all this music in Canvas in 4 parts, and then we showed up. Oh, so and so didn't come back. So then they saw me come up the next week. Okay, I uploaded the trio. Like I rearranged it as a trio. And they do have to take orchestration and arranging. That is one of the classes, but I don't know that they think about it as something they would actually need to do. But the fact that I could rearrange that meant that I still had my composer of color that I meant to do in week 1 ready to go. And that it didn't stop me. The change, I didn't have to revert back. So this sense of it being ever moving and responding to those challenges in the music business, that's been an advantage for me, that I can move like that. And they see how helpful it would be for them to be able to move like that.
The pandemic has brought opportunities as well as challenges, but those challenges have been very fruitful, it sounds like.
Yeah. It's still hard. The biggest challenge I would say we still have is attendance. It is hard to do this if they're not all there. And I know that university-wide and nationwide, we're seeing attendance being a struggle. Students might feel a little less engaged even if they're not affected by the virus. And I don't know how to solve that one. Obviously, there's some things that I can do with the students who do arrive. You know, I can play the other part, for example, or I can just have them work on their things. We can make it a sectional, but with only 3, it does make it tough. So I think the continuing to try to make them feel engaged, and I try to make them feel welcome when they come, even if I'm kind of mad at them because they missed something, or you know there was a sense of not doing what you should have done. That these online platforms can be very welcoming, and that the fatigue we sometimes feel with screens can be mitigated a lot by this sense of it being. That was one of my things of what does chamber music do? It builds teams.
I think for many students too, being able to connect with each other, even if it's in Webex or Zoom, has been a sort of touchstone for their weeks, or their trying to give some sort of sense of schedule or normalcy.
Yeah.
And then to be able to do as you're there, not just sit back and listen, but actually be able to perform and share, I think is even more vital.
Yep. Like I said, I've been enjoying to no end playing Deck the Halls with them on my euphonium, and just getting that you would have done that all the time. It would have been a normal part of the day. And I know my colleagues too were feeling that same thing, that all the normal things we used to get through the tough times, many of them feel gone. And all that's left of the tough times, it can feel like. So we need to look for these little windows of joy that would have been, we built them into the degree and the major as a way to get through, but now some of it's dismantled. Yeah.
It's not been an easy semester, but it's thrilling to hear about the good stuff that's going on in your class.
It is really fun, and I'm proud of all, and I know that, you know, these two, the music majors have had extra challenges. The blowing of the instruments has been found to be really dangerous in some cases and settings, and the brass and woodwind instruments and voice especially, and that this is really quite challenging above and beyond simply sitting farther apart. It's a lot more complicated than that. I made a whole YouTube tutorial this weekend about how to use the mask with the tuba and how to use the bell cover and like what it sounds like, and I played because people aren't using them. It's too difficult and it feels weird and you feel suffocating, and so we're all, yeah, the music has some special challenges in this that are additional, and the students they're doing so well just to be staying still in the game.
Incredible.
Well, I
Any
think
other
you've come up with some
questions?
great solutions.
Thank you. It's fun to brag on them. Yeah, like we said, you know, we can be mad at them in private for maybe a thing or two once in a while, but you know, we're so grateful for this field that we're in. I think we all feel that, you know, I'm proud to be doing this right now because I can contribute something. I'm hopeful that these students will always remember. They'll always have those stories. Oh, Dr. Hersey made us record it 3 times. and that they'll remember that down the road.
Look at what we created. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah, and then that's the other part of it too, is that they'll have this we're going to make this holiday recording, you know, come heck or high water here, and they're going to have that. It's going to live on. If they had just walked out in GPAC and played it once, it may have felt like it disappeared forever. And this way, they're going to have something that they could play next Christmas. It could come up on the Facebook remembrance, you know, the flashback, and be like, oh, this was our COVID holiday performance. So that's good too.
You could even go and ask them, you know, what do you wish you played differently during this recording? And you could go in the final cut and make little adjustments.
That's true. Where do you think your crescendo should be? Yes, that's a great idea, Mark. I should have like an open work session with them on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I found, I do some of that just audio only for my oral skills class. And if someone's singing too loud in their duet, you can just, make them softer. If they come in and certain notes stick out, you just, reduce those ones.
Yeah.
And then the overall effect is much better than it would have been in
yeah.
a live circumstance.
Like you can instill some pride that way because you tweaked it a little.
Right. But they don't know.
but it's still like, hey, we sound pretty good, and it's still them. But yeah.
Right.
It's a group effort in all ways.
And that's performance. I mean, we gotta showcase our strengths.
Right.
And I guess the hard part is not having an audience, both as a teacher, not having a classroom right in front of you, but as a performer too, not having your audiences there. And I think we all miss that live in-person feel.
It's a giving and a receiving of energy across. And yeah, it's hard to replicate that in the video setting. And so we'll all be grateful when we're back to whatever that normal is someday, that new normal. But I think we're going to be proud that we tried all this stuff, even with the ones that totally flopped, that we got in there and we tried to do as much as we could to replicate those feelings and that experience for them.
Well, I think we can learn things from the online that we then add to the live. I mean, this is not anything new, but particularly with concerts, I've been to some online concerts where it's just a small group of people, and then you talk with the composer, and then you talk about every piece afterwards. You talk to the performers. You may not do that in a live scenario.
It really can enhance the feeling of being close in a way that you wouldn't have thought. Yeah.
Right. So it's more intimate in some ways when it's online.
Yeah.
This is not really a technological issue, and I know, Scott, you probably need to go. This is more of just a musical issue, but when it comes to introducing the students to more music by people of color and women composers, the balance I always struggle with is some of them don't know some of the quote unquote standard music, and then it's just a question of do they need to know music by Beethoven? Do they need to know music by Bach? Or can we just kind of forget those guys and teach them everything else?
That's a really good question.
I kind of feel a responsibility that if they go out and they call themselves music majors and say, oh, I love Beethoven, they're like, who's that?
And I agree. I agree with you. I still think we should teach some of the canon in myself. But I think there's room to put in these others and to teach. Yeah, I agree with you. So my young woman that you saw in the video, she's playing a standard concerto for double bass by a white European male on her jury. That is a standard piece that she will teach all her life, that will be common. And then she's playing that Beatrice de Dia song about the man doing her wrong. And that is her, that is her. And then she played the Andante as well, and Clara Schumann. So she's got a nice, well-rounded, but I agree with that. I think that we just add them in, and maybe there can be, a tad, like in my case, it'd be Gabrielli. Brass players are going to play Gabrielli all their lives. So there could be a tad less Gabrielli during the, undergraduate times, but I'm still going to make them play some, but I would just put in some Fannie Mendelson in place of maybe one of the Gabriellis somewhere along the way. We don't always have to, but you're right. It is tough. And I think that's another reason people give for not trying is I don't know how to get rid, there's this sense that it's either or, but it's a circle. We just include and we turn the students to the different parts of the circle.
And then I think it just takes more effort, but in a good way to make sure that they realize that they can learn just as much from the non-standard repertoire. Like if they're learning a Clara Schumann piano piece, it teaches all the same musical and technical things that a Robert Schumann piece would.
Yes.
And then just go have them listen to Robert Schumann on the side. So that if they are ever teaching a Robert Schumann piece, they know all the skills to do it, even if they never played it or even if they've never studied it. So.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. These are great conversations to have.
Sort of think about what we learned, I guess, and what we were taught, the curriculum that we were taught when we were in school, and then we are now having to rethink that curriculum in many ways. So it's a good question.
Like we said, the students get uncomfortable, we get uncomfortable, and then we embrace that. I think that's our job.
And with the stickers too, I think the putting the individuals in networks when we see
Yeah.
the different networks and relationships between people. We begin to see Beethoven, for example, as part of a network, maybe that we never acknowledged. And I think that students understand that networking in a way.
Absolutely. People talk to me all day about Berlioz in my 3 degrees, like forever. And nobody ever said Fannie Mendelson Hensel to me at any time. Now I'm a tuba player, but like she wrote no music for tuba, but she would have if she'd had any sense at all. But this focus on one, genius, this genius idea, we can dismantle some of that. And like Mark said, we can still make sure they know all the Berlioz brass works, but yeah.
Thanks again for a wonderful conversation. Are there any other
This was great,
questions?
you guys. I was looking forward to this, even though I was nervous, because I wanted to make sure that we got this message out in a way that made sense, and that it our individual music makings can seem a little mysterious to the outside world. I know, but
Well, what happens in the classroom can be hard to present because you have that energy and enthusiasm in the community. You've done a wonderful job of presenting that today.
well, thank you, and I appreciate you having me on, Scott. And
Thank you.
it was Twitter that connected us, and he saw me posting about this on Twitter, and he said, "Hey, we're going to share this." And so I appreciate that. It's a wonderful example of how the social media sharing can really bring a team together.
It's a wonderful way, I think, too, to have some community when in a tough time and to be able to share the conversation like we are today. I know we're in different places, but we're all connected by what we do at the university. So thank you so much for being here, Mark and Catherine.
Thank you. It's great
Yeah.
to see you
Thanks,
all.
Joanna.
Thank
Thanks, Scott.
you. We'll wrap this up. Join us next week. We'll continue this series with conversations with our peers, and stay tuned for information from the music department about the holiday extravaganza. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.